Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today we are going to continue with the chapter 2 of History Class 9. The name of the chapter is Socialism in Europe and the Russian Revolution. Today we are going to continue with unit number 2, the Russian Revolution here. Let us try to understand how did this revolution unfold and what was the background of such kind of great revolution that changed the history of the world. In one of the least industrialized of European states, this situation was reversed. So many European states were there. Out of that, one of the least industrialized area was the Russia. And socialists, the people those who followed socialism, had already taken over the government in Russia throughout the October Revolution of 1917. Now, the fall of monarchy, when the king was removed from the power in February 1917, and the events of the October are normally called the Russian Revolution. So here we are going to read and find out how did this revolution begin. How did this come about? Let's see the questions here. What were the social and the political conditions in Russia when the revolution occurred? To answer these questions, let us look at Russia a few years before the revolution took place. Unit 2.1, the Russian Empire in 1914. As you know, in 1914, when the First World War began, at the time, Tsar Nicholas II was the king and he ruled Russia and its empire. Besides the territory around Moscow, the Russian Empire included current-day Finland, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, parts of Poland, Ukraine, and Belarus. So these are the various areas, and at the time, like presently they are the states and they are the countries, but at the time these all were included in the Russian Empire. The Russian Empire stretched to the Pacific Ocean and comprised today's Central Asian states also, like Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, etc. And the majority region was Russian Orthodox Christianity, which had grown out of the Greek Orthodox Church, but the empire also included Catholics, Protestants. They are the two parts of the Christianity, and Islam, Muslims, and Buddhists also. Here you can see the picture of the Russian Empire here, and Germany and Austria-Hungary also. Austria and Hungary also. Let us proceed to Unit 2.2, Economy and Society at that time. Let us see what happened during that time. At the beginning of the 20th century, the vast majority of the Russia's peoples were agriculturalists. Now, Russia's people mostly depended on agriculture and farming. About 85% of the Russian Empire's population earned their living from agriculture. This proportion was higher than in most European countries. That means in most of the European countries, people dependent on the different types of agriculture. But here the percentage was quite high, that is 85%. For instance, in France and Germany, the proportion was between 40% and 50%. So around 40 to 50% of people dependent on agriculture in France and Germany. But in the Russian Empire, cultivators produced the crop for the market as well as for their own needs also. And Russia was a major exporter of grain also. Now, what about the industry? Industry was found in pockets, means in certain regions and certain selected specific areas. Prominent industrial areas were like St. Petersburg and Moscow. Craftsmen undertook much of the production, but large factories existed alongside the craft workshops. So here we come to know so many people undertook the production, but many large factories were there, but along with that some small craft workshops were also existing alongside in the empire. Many factories were set up in the 1890s when Russia's railway network was extended. As soon as the railways became very popular and extended, so more such factories were set up, because it was easy to carry the raw materials and the production also from one place to another. And foreign investment, the people of other countries invested a lot of money in industry, and it increased during that time. Coal production doubled up, it almost became double, and iron and steel output quadrupled, like it increased 4 times. Okay, it comes from like quadrilateral, 4 sides like that. So by 1900s, in some parts of the country, factory workers were there and craftsmen were almost equal in number. So craftsmen, those were working in small crafts workshop, and the factory workers were almost equal in number. Most industry was the private property of the industrialist, and government supervised large factories to ensure minimum wages and limited hours of the work. So the factory inspectors, however, could not prevent the rules being broken. So although there was limited hours and the wages was fixed by the government, but still the government could not see that whether the rules are being followed or not. In craft units and small workshops, the working day was sometimes 15 hours, which was quite more compared with 10 to 12 hours in factories. And accommodation also varied from rooms to dormitory. Here you can see one picture of a dormitory where all the people are sleeping in one room and they have to share the space with others. So, workers were a divided social group at that time. Some had very strong links with the villages from which they had come, their main native place, and others had settled in cities permanently. Workers were divided by skill also, what work, what quality they did. So they have now the qualities or the skill that they have made them distinct from one person to another. Like a metal worker of St. Petersburg recalled, said that metal workers considered themselves aristocrats, means of high noble what you can say like quality they had among other workers. They are far superior, metal workers are far superior among the other workers. Their occupations demanded more training and more skill, and women made up 31% of the factory's labor force by 1914, but they were paid less than men also, between half and three quarters of a man's wage. So as you can see, they used to do hard work but did not get full money also. Divisions among the workers showed themselves in dress and manners also. Some workers formed associations to groups to help the members in times of unemployment or financial hardship, but such associations or groups were very few, and the workers had to suffer a lot whenever there was a problem of unemployment. Let us go down and see. Despite such kind of divisions, workers did unite to strike, work sometimes, stop the work sometimes, and when they disagreed with the employers, their owners, about the dismissals or the work conditions here. These strikes took place frequently in the textile industry during 1890s and 1897, 1896 to 1897, during the time it happened. And again in the metal industry also some kind of problems came up like strike and all during 1902. So here we come to know the constant disagreement or the fight, and the rights of the workers were not given to them. That is why they had to go against their workers, against their employers, and the workers had to even do strike also. In the countryside, that means in the village areas, peasants cultivated most of the land. But the nobility, the aristocrats, the crown means the king, the families of the king's relatives and all, the king and the Orthodox church, the church that controlled the people, the priest, clergymen owned large properties. Like workers, peasants also were divided on the basis of different status. They were also deeply religious, means they followed Christianity or whatever religion they followed. They were quite religious, but except in a few cases they had no respect for the nobility. They did not respect the noble man or the nobility or the aristocrats. The nobles got their power and position through their services to the Tsar and not through local popularity. Now how did these people, nobles, come to power? They actually came to power when they were like what you can say, did some kind of service, some kind of loyalty, showed some loyalty towards the Tsar. Tsar is the king, and the Tsar gave them large areas of land to control, and in that way they were like quite rich, but not local popularity was found in their particular provinces. Why? Because the people didn't like them so much. This was unlike France, where during the French Revolution in Brittany, and these people, the peasants, the farmers, respected the nobles and fought for them. They liked them. They were popular. But in Russia, peasants wanted the land of the nobles to be given to them. They did not want to support the nobles or the aristocrats. Frequently, they refused to pay rent, and even sometimes they murdered the landlords also if they put too much pressure. Like in 1902, this occurred on a large scale in South Russia, and in 1905, such incidents took place almost all over the continent of all over the country of Russian Empire. Now, Russian peasants were different from other European peasants in another way. How? Because they pooled their land together. They collected their land together periodically, and there was no division, and their commune or mir divided it according to the needs of the individual families. And it was that like they were following the ideas of socialism, as they found that we should all be together, and our land farming also we should do together. That is why they pulled their land in periodically together and divided according to the individual needs of the families. Now, Unit 2.3, how did the idea of socialism in Russia spread? All political parties were considered illegal in Russia before 1914. The Russian Social Democratic Workers' Party was founded in 1898 by socialists who respected Marx's views and ideas. So here we know about Marx means Karl Marx. As you know, you have come to know about him. He was a great German philosopher and economist. And what we come to know is that, however, because of government policies and policing, it had to operate as an illegal organization. However, this Russian Social Democratic Workers' Party was declared illegal then because of the government policies, and it set up a newspaper also and mobilized and moved the workers and organized strikes also whenever necessary. Some Russian socialists felt that the Russian peasant custom of dividing the land periodically made them natural socialists. So when they divided the land according to their own requirement, it showed that they had that feeling inside their hearts and minds before and only. They are not required to teach the idea of socialism. They were natural socialists. So the peasants, not workers, could be the main force of the revolution. So workers cannot be the main force of the revolution, but the peasants could become. And Russia could become socialist more quickly than other countries. Socialists were active in the countryside, in the village areas through the late 19th century, and they formed the Socialist Revolutionary Party in the year 1900. This party struggled for the peasants' rights, the rights of the farmers, and demanded that land belonging to nobles be transferred to the peasants, to the farmers. Social democrats disagreed with the socialist revolutionaries about the peasants, and they felt that they are not with the peasants. Why? Because they were social revolutionaries, and Lenin was one of them, and the land belonging to the nobles should be transferred to the peasants. However, Lenin felt that peasants were not one united group, although many peasants were there and they all had the same kind of thinking. But even then, also, there was a division. Why? Because Lenin said these peasants cannot be one united group because some were poor and some were rich. Some worked as laborers also, and some were capitalists who employed the workers. Some very rich farmers were there, and some very poor farmers were there. Some employed the other workers. Some did not have land also. Given this differentiation within them, so here it is given as inverted commas within inverted commas. So this differentiation is like a kind of satirical representation that why the people are not united. So given this differentiation within them, they could not all be part of a socialist movement here. So they all got divided on the basis of the riches and the wealth and the different kinds of divisions of the society. The party was divided over the strategy of organization, whom we should organize together. Vladimir Lenin, who led the Bolshevik group, he thought that in a repressive society like the Tsarist Russia, where it is ruled by the Tsar, the party should be disciplined There should be a proper protocol, some kind of rules and regulations, and should control the number and the quality of its members. Whoever will become the member of this socialist revolutionary group, party, etc., they should be completely under this. And let us see what others also thought. Others like Mensheviks thought that the party should be open to all, like in Germany as it is so. Now, Unit 2.4, a turbulent time, that is 1905 revolution. What happened during that time? Russia was an autocracy. Autocracy means ruled by a group of certain powerful people. Unlike other European rulers, even at the beginning of the 20th century, the Tsar or the king was not subject to parliament. So the king's rule was divine, or he could do whatever he want. He was not to be controlled or asked any question by the parliament or the members of the parliament. Liberals, those who were following liberal policy, the liberals in Russia campaigned to end this state of affairs, and they said that this kind of thing should be stopped. Together with the social democrats and the socialist revolutionaries, they worked with the peasants and the farmers and workers also during the revolution of 1905 to demand a constitution, to say that we cannot allow the Tsar to control like that. And that is why the social democrats and the social revolutionaries, they worked with the peasants and the workers, and they demanded that there must be one constitution and they should be controlling the power of the Tsar. They were supported in the empire by nationalists in Poland, for instance, and in Muslim dominated areas by jihadists. Jihadists were like they were large landowners and all, and who wanted modernized Islam. They also wanted to change the religion of Islam to lead their societies so that they become more developed and more open-minded. The year 1904 was a particularly bad one for the Russian workers. Why? Because the prices of the essential goods, whatever basic essential goods were there, rose so quickly that the real wages, whatever money, whatever wage or salary they got, declined by 20% of them. And it was a very big loss for the workers. The membership of the workers association rose dramatically. As a result, more and more number of workers started to join the associations, and more associations also came up, the workers association. When four members of the assembly of the Russian workers, one group, one association, which had been formed in 1904, were dismissed in Putilov Iron Works, there was a company, there was a factory, there was a call for the industrial action. And over the next few days, over 110,000 workers in Petersburg went on strike. They said, we will not do any work, demanding a reduction in the working day to 8 hours. We cannot work for more than 8 hours. I need increase in wages, and also we need improvement in the working conditions. These were the three main demands of the workers, and they did start the strike there. Now, when these workers came out and the procession started, when the procession of the workers led by Father Gapon, who was the main leader, reached the Winter Palace. It is the building, it is the Winter Palace. It was attacked by the police and the Cossacks. And the Cossacks were the people like the police only and the soldiers. And over 100 workers were killed and about 300 of them were wounded. This incident was known as the Bloody Sunday, and it started a series of events that popularly came to be known as the 1905 revolution. Now, strikes all over the country took place, and universities and schools and closed down when the student bodies also staged walkouts. Mainly the universities, not the schools, because universities, the students were mostly associated with the politics, and they staged walkouts. That means they will not do class. They went out of the class, boycotted the classes, complaining about the lack of the civil liberties. And lawyers, doctors, engineers, and other middle class workers also established their own union of unions and demanded a constituent assembly. So even they also stopped some kind of work, and they also started that we will establish the union of unions. It's an association, and they also said we need an assembly, constituent assembly, that is to be elected by the people. During the 1905 revolution, the Tsar allowed the creation of an elected consultative parliament. That means they will be consulting with the Tsar. And it was also known as Duma in the Russian language. For a brief while during this revolution, there existed a large number of trade unions. There were so many trade unions, business unions were there, and factory committees were there which were made up of the factory workers. After 1905, most committees and unions worked unofficially. They worked, but they did not work officially. Since they were declared illegal, several restrictions were placed on the political activity. And as they were illegal, so they could not do this thing, they could not do that thing. All the political activity were restricted. The Tsar or the king dismissed the first Duma or the elected consultative parliament members within 75 days only and re-elected the second Duma within 3 months. Why? Because he did not want any questioning, interrogation of his authority, of his power, or any reduction in his power and authority. So he wanted to be overall powerful. He changed the voting laws and packed the third Duma with the conservative politicians, those who were under his control, and they would support him. Liberals and revolutionaries were kept out from that Duma or that elected consultative parliament. Now, 2.5, the First World War and the Russian Revolution, Russian Empire. What happened at the time when the First World War began? As you know, in 1914, the First World War broke out between two European alliances, Germany, Austria, and Turkey, the Central Powers. On the other hand, France, Britain, and Russia. Later, Italy and Romania also joined. Each country had a global empire. So this global empire, in the sense that, like we come to know, and they wanted to establish more powerful states, and the war was fought outside Europe as well as in Europe also, and this was the First World War that had taken place. In Russia also, the First World War was initially popular and people rallied around Tsar Nicholas II and they supported him. As the war continued, though, the Tsar refused to consult the main parties in the Duma. So, what to do, how to support the war, what to do in the war, he did not take any kind of help or consultation from the Duma. So, very soon the supports wore thin, the people did not support him anymore, and anti-German sentiments ran high, and at the time they were against Germany, and can be seen in the renaming of St. Petersburg. Earlier it was like a German name, a German ethnicity was related with St. Petersburg, and now they renamed as Petrograd. So Petrograd was the new name of St. Petersburg. The Tsarina here, what you can say, the queen, the Tsarina Alexandra, German origin. She was from Germany and her families were from Germany, and poor advisors like a monk was there, Rasputin, made the autocracy more unpopular, and Rasputin also was not liked by the people of Russia, and even the roots of the German princess, that is Tsarina, who was also known as the Alexandra, the Tsarina of Russia. The First World War on the Eastern Front, on the eastern border side, differed from that of the Western Front. Why? Because in the West, armies fought from trenches. Trenches are like deep, what you can say, structures which are dug in the earth, and people hide and they can fire and they can be protected also, stretched along the eastern fronts. And in the east side, these armies moved a good deal and fought battles, leaving large casualties. And at the time, what happened, when in the east side the armies had to walk a lot and move a lot, and as a whole they were up in the open field, and so many people died, large casualties were there, so many deaths took place. Defeats were shocking and demoralizing. People were like uninspired, demoralized that they are going to lose the war. Army of Russia lost badly in Germany and Austria between 1914 and 1916. There were were over 7 million casualties, deaths by 1917. As they retreated, went back, the Russian army destroyed crops and buildings to prevent the enemy from being able to leave up the land. As they went back to their country, on the way they destroyed the crops and the buildings so that the enemy would not follow them and would not be able to get the advantage from their land or from the land that they were crossing by. Here you can see one picture of all the Russian soldiers during the First World War. It was known as Russian steamroller. So you can read about that. The destruction of crops and buildings led to over 3 million refugees in Russia. And as a whole, Russia was only mainly affected because their own people also turned to be refugees. 3 million. That situation discredited the government and the Tsar also, and Tsar was held responsible in the government that they could not control the situation. Soldiers did not wish to fight such kind of war where there was only death and demoralizing impact. The war also had a severe impact on industry because Russia's own industries were fewer in number, and the country was cut off from the other suppliers of the industrial goods by the German control of the Baltic Sea. Now the Baltic Sea was controlled by the Germany, and Germany was against Russia, so this is why they could not get the things, as the area was cut off from the other suppliers from other countries. Then industrial equipment disintegrated more rapidly in Russia than elsewhere in Europe. Why? Because by 1916, railway lines began to break down and destroyed and ended. And able-bodied men who were working in the industry, they were called up that you have to go to the war and fight. As a result, there was labor shortage, and small workshops or small places which were producing essentials were shut down. You cannot work there. Large supplies of grain was sent not for the people but to feed the army. That is why the workers could not get food also. And for the people in the cities, bread and flour became very scarce. And there was no food or no bread and no flour for the people to eat in the cities and the workers also. And by the winter of 1916, riots and fights at the bread shops were common. People were fighting for the pieces of bread. So this is what happened at the time of the war, the First World War. So next we'll continue with the February Revolution in Petrograd in the next class. Thank you.